Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program Midday Discourse on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi, and many thanks for joining at this hour. Today, we'll be looking at the allocation to states and federal government. Basically, we'll be focusing more on states and local government, in the wake that the federal government and the local government has gotten their local government autonomy, and which happened earlier in the month of July, and then all of this judgment have been passed, and has been said the federal government needs to send the local government their own allocation. Now, looking at these angles now, lots of states have received a certain increment and then percentage, meaning yes, some states received like 50% percentage increment in their monthly allocation, while some received 40%. Today, we are going to be extracting all of those states of the federation that have gotten a certain level of increase in their monthly allocation. And then we'll be dissecting and be seeing the angles and what is expected for all of this resources allocation should be used for, and if the state governors now would be able to pay track and then have a track record of what's happening. But before we dive in and get straight into the conversation, we have several angles that we're going to be looking at this from the political angle, and as well as the economic value that each state of the federation brings to the table. And also, we are going to be looking at the light now of the insecurity and poor states and rich states that we have, and then we're going to be extracting the percentage that each of these states get, and then what we should be expecting from the states, not just the states, but also from the local governments, given the fact that now the local government has full autonomy. So now we are not supposed to be saying salaries not being paid. Notwithstanding, a few state governors are beginning to take swift action to be able to have their local governments chairmen ready. So now they are beginning to set aside dates for election to happen. Now, allocations now are going to be paid directly to the local government account from the federal government. So let's just get into it. But before we get into it, let me bring you up to speed with no fewer than 10 states across the federation received a boost of 50% or more in their monthly allocation from the statutory federal funds. 12 out of 36 states receive an increase of 40% monthly allocation, according to data sourced from monthly report of the Federation Account Allocation Committee, as released by the used or that has gone into states and local governments in the past 1 year. That's from 2022 to 2023. That's June 2022 to May 2023, and June 2023 to May 2024. So those are what has been happening. So now, in the first 5 months of 2024, that is from January to May, the federal government and the 36 states and 774 local governments have shared 10.13 trillion at the statutory allocation from the federation account. Investigations showed that states with over 50% increase include Abia, Benue, Ekiti, Katsina State, Kwara, Lagos, Ogun, Osun, Plateau, and Taraba states. Other states including Adamawa, Anambra, Borno State, Cross River, Ebonyi State, Enugu, Kano, Kebbi, Nasarawa, Niger, Oyo, and Sokoto State got an increase of 40%. So now we are going to be looking at, if you take a very good look at this list that was just mentioned, we see states like Lagos getting 50%, see states like Abia, Ekiti, Katsina, Taraba, Plateau getting a 50% increment, and then witnessing here Adamawa, Anambra, Borno, Cross River, Ebonyi State, Enugu, and Kano, Kebbi, Nasarawa, Niger, Oyo, and Sokoto states, got 40%. So now it's arising different angles of questions that need to be answered, and hopefully we are going to do justice to that on today's edition of the program. But before I introduce my guest who is live with me in the studio, let me get you more background information. The Federation Account Allocation Committee disburses allocations from the revenue generated into the Federation account, which comprises of multiple accounts specific to a sector stroke business type. So the whole money coming into the Federation now has to come from agriculture and oil and gas, forex. All of those sectors need to contribute so we can be able to have a good economy. So it also brings us to the point where some states are getting lesser and then some states are getting higher. Like the states, Lagos State now is a commercial center, and then Lagos State is one of the big states in Nigeria. So now a lot of persons are raising questions. Why would Lagos State, which is a state that has money and has started paying its citizens, its workers minimum wage way before it got approved by the federal government? So all of this angles and these sectors are actually going to be looked into. So the bulk of revenue shared by at FARC meeting by the federal government and the state local government are aiming from oil exports, tax and other stationary allocation under the current revenue sharing formula. The federal government gets 52.68% of the revenue, states gets 26.72%, and local government gets 20.60%. So these are another angle where a lot of persons are asking questions, because some persons are of the opinion that the local government should have more than the state and the federal, because everything starts from the grassroots. So if you don't get it right from the grassroots, there's no how you can start building a house from the top. So lots of persons are saying they are of the opinion that the local government gains more power, so they wouldn't rely so much. But all of these angles now would be looking to what is the local government bringing, how do they generate money? All of these questions will be asked on today's edition of the program. So we'll be going on a quick break, and then when we come back, I'll be introducing you to my guests who would help us dissect, and then we'll extract all of these angles. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
For an insightful idea that takes the center stage and the conversation that gets beyond the headlines, to explore the lasting impact of political decisions, Big Talk got you covered. From policy debates to geopolitical insights, from thought-provoking discussions to actionable insight.
What is the real responsibility of government?
Big Talk delves deep into the heart of the matter. Join us weekdays on global televisions from 6:30 p.m. for a reverting journey into the heart of politics, where we dissect issues shaping our society.
Are you ready to be entertained like never before? Get ready to dive into the latest and greatest entertainment news in lifestyle, music, movies, birthday celebration, and so much more, all on Entertainment Circle on global television. From the hottest red carpet event to exclusive interviews with your favorite stars, we've got you covered. Stay up to date with the latest trends and news from the entertainment world, all in one place. Tune in every Saturday by 1 p.m. with Chung Annabelle Joseph on global television.
Global Morning is your ultimate destination for engaging political and economic matters. I am Uyi Agumofwebe.
And don't forget to include social discussions. Tune in every weekdays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am Queen Agaba.
For insightful breakfast ideas, business summaries, sports highlights, international and local news perspective, I am Anthony Momodu.
Don't miss the in-depth analysis of current and political issues by the Global Morning team and experts. I am Jumai Manson.
Catch Global Morning here on Global Television. Get in on the action. I am Edikan Michael.
We are
The Global Morning Team. is the desk on Global Television.
Nigeria. Come join Anthony Momadou on television's most compelling and facts-finding talk live show.
We are definitely. Can we not say that again? Because
that this country gets it right?
It's the Dex on Global Television, where we analyze and dissect storming issues and commentaries in the world's biggest black nation, Nigeria.
Who is being held accountable for this money?
The eyes have it.
We stay and decide policies and reforms on the Dex. Tune in Mondays to Fridays, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Global Television. Let's stay on the Dex. Are you a
Yes, many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Midday Discourse on Global Television. I am your host, Samuel Odi. Now I'm about to introduce my guest, someone I respect and celebrate so much, a seasoned journalist, and someone from, I'll just mention the part, Mr. Uyi Abumufregbe. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition.
It's always a delight, Samuel.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
So, looking at it now, FEG and local government autonomy, which they fought for over a decade, and then finally, you know, they're seeing the light of dawn. It has been given to them. So, funds now are being allocated, and then a few states are actually getting a certain percentage of increments. Lagos State's gotten 50% increments, Abia State, and a few other states as well. Now, looking at Lagos, Lagos is a commercial center of Nigeria, which is obviously one of the major stakeholders, like if you talk about funds and all of that in Nigeria among states. Now, why do you think Lagos State got an increment of 50%?
It's very simple. Lagos is always referred to as the commercial nerve of Nigeria, even though we know Abuja is the capital city in terms of politics and administration, all right, of the country. Now that's what it is, all right? You look at the volume of revenue that comes from Lagos. Last we checked, for example, we could authoritatively confirm that Lagos was doing over 50 billion in IGR already as a state. So you can imagine what that means for, yes, metropolitan Lagos, commercial Lagos, even without FAC coming through. But you also need to know that away from oil, the bulk of the revenue that comes into the joint accounts, all right, the federation accounts is from Lagos. When you look at all the states across the country, all right, that's the bulk of the money, all right. So it doesn't come as a shock or surprise that Lagos will get that increase. Let's also be clear, since fuel subsidy payments got suspended last year by the president, allocations to states have increased, even though, again, like you and I know, Sam, governors are not in a hurry to announce this difference between what the allocation bracket was prior to suspension of fuel subsidy payments, and now that those payments have been suspended. And that's the reason you see that every time we talk about hardship, economic hardship that is in the country, the presidency is fast to say, what are you doing with the funds, the increase in particular that comes to your states? I mean, that's the federal government talking to states. It's also the reason you see most of the, a good number of the political analysts who bring on our programs are also telling citizens to hold their governors accountable for the amounts of money that comes to them. So that speaks to transparency ultimately, but I'm sure that's one of the elements we'll be talking about in the course of the program.
Yes, talking about transparency now and holding governors accountable. Let's digress a bit for just a few minutes and then look at the current state of the nation protests going on around.
Right.
Do you think, Mr. President has been in office for 14 years and he actually said we shouldn't, go easy on
I guess you meant for 14 months.
For 14 months, rather, sorry.
Right.
He said during his campaign that Nigerians shouldn't go easy on him. Do you think this protest going on is a right call, given the fact that he hasn't been in office for 2 years?
I think it's the right call, Sam, but then let's place that in proper perspective. Okay. If you're talking about those who went berserk with the protest, or in the name of the protest, or in the guise that they were protesting, that's a different conversation for another day, because we have seen those waving Russian flags and those calling for change, I mean, unconstitutional change of government and all of that. That's an extreme to the conversation. But let's stay with those who came with a list of demands to say, look, we want this, we want that. I mean, legitimate demands. Some have even said, look, let's return to status quo, let's return subsidy, and blah, 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 blah. I think that was a way of also holding the president and the federal government accountable for some of these things, all right? But you see, beyond saying, let's return fair subsidy and all of that, I think one of the subtle requests or demands they are making is to say, let's bring real measurable reforms to the oil and gas sector, because whether you like it or not, that's the golden goose that lays the eggs that, of course, feeds the country, which is oil. All right. I think within that context, it just makes a lot of sense to say you are holding government accountable. President Bola Tinubu didn't stop at that. He also said he is not ignorant, he's not naive of the load or the bulk of work he will be expected to do on account of being the president. And he also said to his, if you like, call them his two ICs, I mean, the aides, to say nobody should feign ignorance. We all know how bad the system was before we came in. So we've got to roll up our sleeves and work. He was also at that point, he did talk about how that Disabala Usman, former MD of NPA, who had a team that will do a time-to-time review of performance and so on and so forth. So yes, it was precisely the right call they were making. And I hope, because people have been picking holes in the president's speech from 4 days ago to say, look, that speech was hollow, that speech didn't address the real issues, that speech looked like it was more politically motivated. But in all of that, I think what the government, beyond the president as a person, should do is go back and look at the valid points that were raised on account of that speech, because that speech was expected to address the salient demands by the legitimate protesters that came to say, look, our country can't continue to be on this path. We've got to have a radical shift, some sort of paradigm shift and all of that. So the long and the short of the story is that that call was right, and we hope that those conversations will continue in ways that are legal, legitimate, constitutional, free, and fair to all.
Okay. Looking at those demands now, though, part of the speech, and then there was also another circulation that happened yesterday where, you know, the Mr. President said the pain that Nigerians is going through is just more like that of a woman trying to give birth, and then we're going to see the break of dawn. So how long do you think, you know, like he said, he inherited an economy that is, you know, going down the drain, and then tightening monetary policy by CBN and all those other factors. Do you think it's helping revamp this economy, or is still dragging us down, looking at the current situation and cost of foods in the market?
Sam, I'll not sit here and pretend like I'm an economist, because obviously you and I know I'm not one. But I do know street economics a little, right? So when we had the former acting governor of the CBN, I mean, the guy who took over from former governor, Godwin Emefiele, all right? It was at that time we floated the Naira. Now, it's been several months, virtually 1 year down the line, right? And people are still faulting that idea that it was a bad move, that Nigeria, or if you like, the monetary and fiscal authorities got off on the wrong foot by floating the Naira. They say that's one of the things still hurting us as a country and as an economy. So there's that one. However, when you say you are tightening the monetary policies, okay, just for perspective again, look at the monetary policy rate, the MPR. It has been reviewed again at the time at the last meeting of MPC. All right. So when you look at those measures, experts are telling us, including the CBN itself, that look, these measures may not pay off just today. However, ultimately, they will help rebalance, or if you like, recalibrate, all right, the fiscal and monetary policy landscape. But then the question, Sam, is how do you explain that to the everyday woman who probably is under the sun or somewhere in the rain selling right now? How does it put food on the table of everyday Nigerians? So there is that. But you see, we must also realize that no matter how much you try to tighten your monetary or fiscal policy structure, most of these things are still, for want of better words, and sadly so, subservient to the frameworks and the recommendations of the IMF and the World Bank, particularly the IMF. So the question is, have we been able to divorce ourselves or our economy from the Bretton Woods institutions, as they call them, right? So that's another question we need to answer going forward. But you see, these reforms must be done in such a way that they don't give us off as a country that is desperate, because that appears to be what is happening for the most part. You see people who know economics like the back of their hands, they are fighting these policies every other day. Yeah. So it raises concerns. In fact, it gets you worried that the CBN governor would come out and tell you these are the things we're doing. But you find people who also understand the dynamics around these issues also telling you that we're making mistakes with some of these issues in terms of the way we approach them. But then some people find confidence knowing that the president who appointed Dr. Olayemi Kadoso already knows his trajectory, he understands his background, he trusts his judgments, and he's convinced he has the required skills and competence to drive the economy, whether it's fiscal or monetary policy. But again, let's be very clear, times have changed, and that has happened very drastically. So whether those dynamics are still the same as what we had a year, 2 or 3 ago is another conversation entirely, because an economist will tell you that if you were earning 500,000 by May 28th in 2023, your 500,000 is probably not more than 150,000 naira right now, looking at the value of the naira and the inflationary trend, particularly food inflation.
All right, we're going to be moving away from that conversation because that's not the angle we're looking at, but we just wanted to have a few bases in terms of trying to hold governors accountable, given the fact that since, subsidy payment has stopped, then this funds that are supposed to be paid for subsidies being given to the states, and yet citizens of Nigeria are still complaining about the fact that things are outrageously very expensive. Now, in terms of holding and looking at on a brighter note, the dollar now is actually doing so well again. The naira rather is doing so well against the dollar, given the fact that the CBN now are beginning to auction the dollars that we have for the rental and as well for banks. So in the next couple of weeks, we should be seeing floods of food. Back to this subject matter of holding states and governors responsible. With this current increment now that we've witnessed for a few states, and something occurred to me in one of the reports that 40% was allocated to Borno State, which has been hit so bad for over a decade now with insecurity. Obviously, Borno State may not be generating so much funds into the federation account. So what role would that have to play now to help the insecurity issue going on within that region?
You see, Borno, like a couple of other states in the northeast, right, of the country, is dealing with a lot of issues, especially insecurity. And we also know how that has directly impacted the farming community in not just Borno State, but states across the northeast and the northwest of the country. People can't go to farms. Reports are coming out every other day that there are communities where you have to pay bandits to be able to go to farm. A young lawyer came to, actually a law student, came to one of our programs the other time, was talking about how that's somewhere in certain states, all right, in the northwest, you would have to, people come to Abuja to work, send money back home to their grandparents, to their parents, to be able to, as it were, settle bandits, just so they can have access or regain access to their farm. So that's how challenging it has been. You and I also are aware that before now, even the governor himself, talking about Professor Zulum, had a challenge even moving around his own state, where he is the chief executive. At the point, he would have to fly a helicopter, all right, to go to some part of the state, maybe to reach out to IDPs, to do some community assessments, and stuff like that. So for Borno, it's a peculiar case, and it's a sad case. And we hope that for a phenomenon that has lasted well over a decade, it comes to an end real soon. Otherwise, it's going to continue to experience a very radical depletion in its internally generation base.
Okay, we'll be going on a very quick break, and then when we come return, Midday Discuss continues as we begin to extract the percentage that states and local government tend to earn. The local governments are meant to earn 20.60% of the allocation directly from the federation account, while states are meant to earn 26.76%. Some persons have argued. When we come back, we'll get into that conversation. Please do stay with us.
Time check. It's midday. Then it's Midday Discourse. Midday Discourse is a program that covers trending local and international news, current issues, and human-related topics. Join Samuel Odi weekdays 1 p.m. on Global Television. The discussion starts here. In an ever-busy world, the increasing challenge of keeping track of health matters can be extremely demanding. Follow the latest health tips and trends on Health Guide on Global Television on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Health Guide on Global Television. Put your health first.
With every government.
Yes, the discussion obviously starts here, and many thanks for joining. If you're just joining, welcome to the program, Midday Discuss. So it's been argued by some analysts that the local governments are meant to get more of the allocation from the federation account than the states. The argument is the grassroots is where the most work is. So whatever happens from the grassroots, transcends into the state. So they've argued that the state shouldn't be earning more than the local government because a whole lot of infrastructural activities need to happen. So, Mr. Uyi, what's your reaction to this? Are you on the same page with the fact that the local government should earn more allocation than the states?
You see, it's interesting how you have that conversation. It's a bit technical, but we're going to get to the political angle to it shortly. But first of all, let's ask ourselves, when you say you have a country like Nigeria, what makes the country? It is the states that make the country, and that's the reason the states are called subnationals, right? There's a reason for that. So if, God forbid, all the 36 states, including the FCT, are underdeveloped, what do you have? You have an underdeveloped Nigeria. You can't say Nigeria is a developed country when you have 36 states plus the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, underdeveloped. It's an irony in itself, and it looks dumb, right? So if you have a state, let's say a state like Edo that has 18 local government councils or areas, the question is, what are each of those local government chairmen doing? Because they already held their elections last year and they have elected local government chairmen, right? So what are each of those local government chairmen doing within their respective local government areas? Now, if they are underdeveloped, ultimately there's nothing you can do about it. You are going to have an underdeveloped state. Now, if they are also raising their game, they are rising to the occasion, whether it's about health services, about fixing roads, even they can fix roads, let's say grade roads, for example, they're able to do those basic things that a local government council is expected to do within the confines of the constitution or the law generally, then it means you are going to have a developed state ultimately. So question is, should states get more? Should local government councils get more than the states? Well, things you can't have a local government, one local government having more allocation than the entire state. However, the accumulation of what all the local governments in the state should get should be higher than what the state gets. Because they are the ones who help to, or at least they are expected to, even though that's not always the practice or expectation, the reality, they are the ones expected to help develop the states from the ground level, from that sort of ground up approach. All right, so that's what it's supposed to be. Therefore, if, you don't expect that the governor should come to a local government or the state government should come to a local government and be discussing primary health care and be discussing things around maternal health, things around sinking boreholes, whether or not the water is clean or potable and things like that, all right? Yes, you may have the state water board, but then the local government has a responsibility along the lines of basic things like even markets, sanitation, hygiene, even within the metropolis of a state, the center of a state, the city as we know it. You don't expect the governor to come out and been addressing issues around the heap of trash and how that the markets are not clean and things like that. Those are things that should be done at the very lowest rung of the ladder, which is the local government. Therefore, as the good book says, to whom much is given, much is expected. Now, conversely, if you are giving much to that person, if you, in terms of the workload or responsibility, is also expected naturally, and fairness demands that you should allocate a substantial amount of resources to them to be able to achieve that goal. Therefore, it just makes sense, whether economically, politically, and even from a human angle, that the local government gets so much to be able to do whatever it is we're expecting them. Because going forward, Sam, the conversation is going to snowball, or if you like, it's going to evolve to a point where people will become so politically conscious and they want to hold their local government chairman accountable. When this protest started, and we heard that some people went to state government houses, all right? I think it was a good thing. The only problem was that some of them became violent.
Yes.
Otherwise, take this peaceful protests, these peaceful demonstrations to your state governments. Let the governor know why you are not happy about some roads, because governors are fast to tell you about federal roads.
Yes.
I've never heard a governor that came out and said, well, we have some number of roads that are state roads, and
yes.
these are the things we're doing to specifically address the problems with those roads. So we must find a way to partition how we, as it were, apportion responsibilities so that we don't, as we say on social media, press the federal government's neck so much that it can't breathe, and then the states and local governments are somewhere smiling about the whole precarious situation in which we find ourselves in the country.
You know, like you rightly mentioned about protesters, a few protesters taking the peaceful protests down to the state governors. We saw that happen in River State and other parts of the country.
Kano also had that experience.
Yes, Kano also had that experience. So those informations now are laid back now, and foundation has been laid on that. Looking at the state governors now, a few states now, like Osun now, are rushing to like have their own local government elections now. How key is it going to be for these state governors now to have, because they are the executive chiefs of their states, how key is it going to be for them to track and monitor that the allocation that goes to the local government is actually being utilized properly for the basics that you've mentioned, healthcare and security?
You see, a while ago, Sam, I told you, I said, we'll have to get to the political angle of this conversation, and we're there already. You see, we also need to we need to x-ray the process. All right, local government chairmen don't fall through the cracks of the sky. They have to come from somewhere. They are members of political parties. Some of them are senior members, influential members, at least at the grassroots. So the question is, who determines how a local government chairman emerges? I know of a state, for example, where at the time it was very simple to do. I mean, from a political standpoint, it was about the governor had a number of slots of local government chairmen he must present. The deputy governor also had his, and then the state chairman of the ruling party in that state had his as well. So if, for example, the governor says, well, we have some number of local governments areas or councils in these states, and I'm going to take 60%, all right, give 30 to the deputy governor and 10 to maybe the chairman of the party in my state, right? So what happens? It means that they are going to bring, as we say, they say in politics, their boys to run those local governments. And that's why you see some persons still worry that, I mean, despite these Supreme Court verdicts that has now made it very clear that local government councils must get their allocation straight to their own accounts, there's still the concern of the loyalty, because again, that's a strong political element, the loyalty of the local government chairman to the governors. And that's why you see there's a possibility that we have not fully detached this local government chairman, or even the local government as a system, from the aprons of the governors. Because if a governor is the one responsible for ensuring that Samuel Odi became a chairman of a local government council, there's a pretty good chance that your loyalty is with that governor. So, off the records, how are we sure you are not you're not splitting the local government allocation and making some available to the state governor in whatever guise? Now, that raises two very important issues. One, the people, like I mentioned a while ago, must become 3 times more politically aware now, beyond just voting. They must know that the local government councils are responsible for certain things, and they must understand those specifics. Very important, right? So it must be such that the same way we hold the federal government responsible for issues around national security, issues around immigration, and so on and so forth, or the national economy, we must also hold the state and the local government councils responsible for certain things. So the people have a role to play, very critical. The second is that the anti-graft agencies, whether it is the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, or the ICPC, must be ready to also spotlight the local governments. I'm happy with what we're hearing from the news today about the EFCC going after some local government chairmen somewhere in the southwest of the country on account of how they spend public funds. See, it is called public funds for a reason. It's not your money. If it's your money, you can decide to have lunch with 50,000 every day for the next 10 years. People may say you are irresponsible, people may say you are not frugal, but ultimately everybody understands that's your money. But once it becomes public funds, or what they call taxpayers' money, it becomes a different conversation altogether, because there's a reason it is called public funds. And that's the reason you see that in civilized countries, for example, a public officer can lose $1 million or €1 million or £1 million of his personal money. He may not even talk about it on the news. But once it becomes public funds, that is even smaller than that, you see the country is releasing all of his apparatus, legal apparatus, to pursue that case to a logical conclusion. Somebody told me one time in 2008, he said, look, he said the U.S. government, if the need arises, can spend $1 million to pursue a crime of $100. Not because they want to recover $100, just to prove a point and set as a precedent. That's how important public funds are. And that's the reason you realize that when there was COVID-19 the other time, some persons were trying to circumvent the laws by going through, using backhand tactics, all right, to benefit from monies that had been made available for those people who couldn't go to work, some of them $600 per month and all of that. The government says, look, we go nowhere. We must bring everybody, involved in this scam to book, because it is not the president's money. It is not the state governor's money. It is public funds. Therefore, we must get to the root of all this. So that's how important public funds are. And we do hope that the relevant authorities or agencies will also now put the local government councils and their chairmen or their executives under the radar in such a way that everybody will be held accountable depending on the level of responsibilities they've been handed.
Now, let's look at this situation from a different angle of social responsibility now of the people being aware of what they need or the local government council need to do for the local government. Now, most of them are ignorant of what they are to expect from the local government chairman. Looking at the social angle now, how key is it for those in the local government to get educated on what to expect, not to always call down on the president when they don't have light in their streets?
I think there are a couple of angles to this, Sam. First of all, the federal government must be seen to be playing its part. They say he who must come to work with him must come with clean hands. So if the federal government is not doing its part, you can't be calling out states or local governments leadership, all right? And that's why people thought it was, a lot of people I spoke with thought it was the right move for the federal government to have gone to court to say, look, we must ensure that the local government is split, so to speak, from the apron strings of the governors, all right, which has been achieved. And the next thing people are clamoring for now is to say, let's have an independent organ of governments, all right, that will conduct local government elections, as against the status quo, where it is the governor who appoints the chairman of the state's independent electoral commission at his own, at his pleasure. And of course, he serves at his pleasure. And then that's, again, cast a shadow of doubt all over the whole process and things like that. So we have started that process. You see, they say ignorance of the law is not an excuse. That's what they say within the legal parlance. But then you also realize that you can't afford to be ignorant of certain basic things and expect that some magic or miracle will happen. People must understand, they must walk themselves through the figures. You may not be able to know where the money is kept, of course. But you must understand that this is what this is where I live, this is my local government council.
This is what I expect
to
do.
Exactly. This is what I know you got. And the information is out there. The relevant agency of government has also made it available. It's public knowledge. You got XYZ for the month of July, for example, and you're supposed to do this and this. This is already second week of August. What have you done? Where are we? Is your spending is your spending commensurate with what you got for the month of July, beyond just paying salaries and repainting the local government secretariat and changing the billboard or the signage in front of it? Do you understand what I'm saying? This is not about being violent. It's about bringing science to the conversation.
Asking questions.
Exactly. You must ask questions. And they say figures don't lie, no matter how much you try to get smart with them. All right. So people must know that it is your money. I think that's the first consciousness we must whip up, that it is your money. It is not the local government chairman's money. The local government chairman does not have any more access to the money than you do in terms of benefits that accrues from how the money is spent. So you can't have a local government that says, we have paid salaries, we've been doing very well. What about the roads that were supposed to be graded? The rains are here, for example, or the rains will be here depending on the season of year. The rains are going to be here soon. What is the local government doing in that respect? Is the local government being proactive about it? There's probably a primary school in a local government or the only secondary school in that local government. It doesn't have a roof over it. Is the local government chairman even perturbed about it? Is the local government itself as a system, as an administrative arm, even having that conversation? People must be ready to put some pressure in a way that is healthy on local government leadership. Otherwise, Nigeria will continue to be called a country in the global south.
Looking at those angles now, that's the angle from the social aspect now. Okay, basically most of commissioning of roads and schools now are usually, most of the times, from history that we've seen, done by state governors. And then it's obviously the job of the local government chairman and then his cabinet to handle that. How key is it now for people to be able to vote their choice and not having political godfathers, you know, appoint someone or force someone down their throat without via election, and then having INEC also play a massive role that would then lead to people getting their choice leader?
It's a tough call you're making now, Sam, because we live in a system where poverty has been largely weaponized, right? So you can have what you have now is more like an elitist conversation for a man who doesn't have the slightest idea where his next meal will come from, right? All right, so it's going to be difficult. But then, you see, we must own the process. The people must know that they have a responsibility fundamentally to own the process, all right? And the people must also be dispassionate about how they analyze some of these issues. For instance, if somebody is going to emerge, or there's a pretty good chance somebody will emerge the next chairman of your local government council, all right? Are you going to support that person because he comes from your mom's side? You know, there's that sentiment he's from our side.
Yes.
Even when you know this person is not competent, this person doesn't have the pedigree, the trajectory, the history, or even the competence to be the next local government chairman, all right? That's number one. Number two, if you say you don't like the idea of the next local government chairman or somebody who has been as it were, who has clenched the ticket of a political party in the state to become, in a bid to become the next local government chairman. Are you fighting that idea because you don't like the person, or because you're persuaded from knowledge that the person does not possess the requisite capacity to provide that leadership on that level, all right? So that's the kind of conversation we should be having. Otherwise, it's going to be such that the governor of that state can call the youth leaders into a room and induce them one way or another. And the next thing you see is they sway in the governor's direction and you continue the status quo, what we call the same old, all right? So people must understand that they own the process, and they must indeed, as a matter of fact, in practice, own the process. And they must also understand that they have a responsibility to continue to monitor. In fact, Obama was asked one time, how do you show to your daughters that what are your daughters convinced you love them as a father? He said, I don't want them to just know I love them as a father. I want them to see themselves being loved by me as their father. So it is beyond you saying you are the local government chairman. The people must show to the local government chairman that, look, on account of you being the council leader, you have a responsibility and we have our eyes on you. Most times, politicians believe that people are not watching. And they believe that even when people are watching, there's short attention span. And that's the reason you see, they just do certain things and they say, okay, hold on, just give them a few weeks, give them a month or two. They'll get past it. And for example, members of House of Reps told us a while ago that they were going to slash their salaries, I think by 50%, because they also feel the hardship of Nigerians. As it stands today, apart from the fact that there was news yesterday or the day before from some members of Reps saying that, well, bureaucracy is the reason we have not been able to fulfill our promise. Who else has had that conversation 72 hours after that report became public knowledge? You see, we must have the tenacity, we must continue to be resilient about the sort of conversations we have concerning how we develop our country. Again, Sam, it must be a bottom-to-top approach. Otherwise, we'll be placing the cart before the horse every time.
Do you think those waving those Russian flags is led by hunger, and then some persons brainwashing them with probably T-pens and then letting them fly those flags?
They say there is no smoke without fire. So there must be a group of elites who are responsible for that. I'd like to call it initiative, because it's somebody's idea, whether you like it or not, as crazy as it is, right? The people doing it know it's treason. They know it's a treasonable offense. They are not ignorant of it. But you see, they can't put their faces to it. So they need poster boys and poster girls to do it. So they look for people who are vulnerable, who are gullible, people who have been dealt a very dangerous blow by poverty, literacy, you know, at a very, on that very bad level, all right, so do all of that. For example, I can almost tell you for free, Sam, that a good number of those persons who were waving those flags had no idea what they were even doing. For them, it's protests we are doing. It was a big deal. Why are you guys surprised? But then, if only they knew the weight of crime they were committing at that point in time, they'll have everything. And you also want to think about a person who we now understand has been taken into custody, who got busy making those flags the entire time. This is not COVID-19 face and nose masks we're talking about. These are flags of another country, and you haven't sent that country to come and intervene in the national affairs of another country. So it doesn't work. But again, somebody once said in a movie from the 90s that there's always going to be a little unhappy corner on earth. So most times, sadly, you find people from that little corner who can be taken advantage of by the elites to drive some sinister objectives.
So for the governors now, how key is it going to be for them to like supervise and then hold local government chairmen accountable for, you know, all of these funds that will be getting to them and then see projects being done and not just done, but done and completed?
Let's be very clear, Sam. The local government chairmen are not accountable to the governors. They are accountable to the people within their respective local councils, their local government areas. So if you go to a local government anywhere across this country right now, you are not going to go to the governor and say, this is what I've done so far. Unless maybe from a political standpoint, there's always going to be a chair element, there's always going to be Baba care, there's always going to be that loyalty thing that politicians always talk about. Ordinarily, the loyalty the local government chairman owes is 100% of the people. And that loyalty is not about you going to doff your cap in front of their houses every day. It's about the value you're bringing, how that they see that you've been in office for 18 months and their lives have changed meaningfully within that period. Otherwise, they don't owe any explanation to the government.
Do you think an opposition party can emerge as a local government chairman in a ruling? For example, you have a governor who is from the APC and then you have a local government chairman who is contesting for the office from Labour Party. Do you think there's a high chance for that to happen, to have two different parties ruling in the same state?
Yes, very possible. It's going to happen on account of several variables. One is political consciousness, and then the ability to stand up to the truth. For example, up until elections were conducted, general elections last year, some persons never thought you could have people from the Labour Party, from the YPP coming to either the Senate or the House of Representatives. But we've seen that happen in several states, in almost all the geopolitical zones in this country. So what that tells you, Sam, quickly, is that it's unpredictable. Like I said, if the people are politically conscious enough, if they're ready to own the process long enough, because this is, again, not a walk in the park or hot knife through butter, as they say. If the people do all of this, yes, it is possible for you to have a Labour Party governor in the state, and you have local government chairmen from across the opposition parties, whether it's the ADC, the PDP, APGA, or what have you.
Yes, Mr. Oyi said the truth would prevail if a lot of persons will come out to stand up and then demand and then act on the rights of their right to vote for who they want to and not letting anybody, you know, enforce someone down their throat. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of the program, Mr. Oyi.
Always a delight. Thank you.
Yes, that's how much time will permit us to take on today's edition of the program. My name is Samuel Odi. I'll see you all tomorrow with another exciting edition of the program. Bye for now.